On December 2nd, a controversial operation by the United States military in the Caribbean Sea resulted in a significant loss of life. According to an official statement released by the Pentagon, U.S. forces engaged and subsequently bombed a vessel suspected of involvement in drug smuggling activities. The operation, which the military claims was part of an ongoing counter-narcotics efforts in the region, tragically led to the deaths of 4 individuals aboard the targeted boat. The incident has immediately raised questions regarding the rules of engagement, the positive identification of the vessel's occupants and cargo, and the proportionality of the lethal force used against an alleged smuggling operation. Further details regarding the precise location of the incident, the affiliation of the vessel, and the immediate justification for deploying lethal air-to-sea ordnance have yet to be fully disclosed, pending an internal military investigation into the matter. A critical concern surrounding the incident is the documented double tap or second strike that targeted the distressed vessel. Evidence, primarily in the form of publicly available video footage of this action, strongly suggests that the second strike was carried out against individuals who no longer posed a threat. This footage distinctly shows that at least 2 individuals clinging to the wreckage of the destroyed vessel, their precarious position, reliant on the remnants of the hull for buoyancy and survival, clearly indicates they were no longer combatants or capable of operating the vessel, thus raising serious questions about the proportionality and legality of the subsequent attack. This double tap tactic targeting survivors or individuals who have been rendered harmless is a contentious and widely criticized practice in modern conflict, often cited as a potential violation of international humanitarian law, which mandates the protection of those who are hors de combat, or out of the fight. Pete Hegseth's controversial rules of war philosophy centers on the principle of maximum lethality and a dramatic reduction in restrictive rules of engagement. This approach is fundamentally predicated on the belief that existing military culture has become overly bureaucratic and risk-averse, thereby hindering effective military operations. The core tenets of this philosophy advocate for a significant empowerment of on-the-ground commanders. Hegseth argues that these leaders should be trusted to use what he has frequently termed common sense in rapidly evolving combat situations, rather than being shackled by a voluminous and often contradictory set of rigid regulations written by personnel far removed from the battlefield. The intention is to enable quicker, decisive action and to instill confidence in field personnel that they will not face undue legal scrutiny for actions taken in the heat of battle. Furthermore, Hegseth promotes a critical reduction in mandatory administrative and culture war-oriented training. He contends that excessive, often politically charged training cycles detract from mission-essential skills and needlessly consume valuable time. By scaling back this non-core instruction, the goal is to substantially increase the amount of time troops can spend on essential field training, ultimately making them more proficient and battle-ready. Finally, a cornerstone of this philosophy is the push for advancement based strictly on merit. This element is intended to counter Hegseth's politically misguided view that there is an undue emphasis on diversity quotas or administrative proficiency over demonstrable combat leadership and tactical skills. The focus is to reward competence and lethality, ensuring that the most capable service members are the ones promoted to positions of greater responsibility. To the surprise of no one, this aggressive philosophy has not been without significant controversy. The recent high-profile incidents involving service members operating under looser rules have inevitably brought this entire approach under intense public and political scrutiny. Critics argue that prioritizing maximum lethality and less restrictive rules of engagement increases the risk of civilian casualties, potential war crimes, and could ultimately undermine the moral standing and long-term strategic goals of the United States military. The debate continues to rage between those who view the current system as debilitating and those who see the rules of engagement as essential to maintaining professional standards and international law. In response to public backlash, it appears Hegseth and Trump are now attempting to simultaneously endorse the extreme violence while publicly disavowing responsibility for the terrible outcomes. The controversy surrounding the recent surge in extreme violence has taken a new and troubling turn, with key figures, Hegseth and Trump, now engaged in coordinated public relations efforts. Faced with a tidal wave of public backlash and widespread condemnation over the terrible outcomes of the violence, the duo appears to be attempting a rhetorically difficult and ethically dubious maneuver, simultaneously endorsing the underlying aggressive and often brutal actions while vehemently disavowing any personal or political responsibility for the tragic consequences. This dual-pronged strategy seeks to satisfy two conflicting audiences. On the one hand, they aim to reassure their most fervent base, those who openly celebrate or rationalize the extreme behavior, that the aggressive stance and spirit of the actions remain fundamentally sound and justified. This is achieved through coded language, subtle nods, and continued support for rhetoric that incited the violence in the first place. On the other hand, they are making overt, though often contradictory, public statements designed to deflect blame from themselves for the actual real-world death, destruction, and suffering. They frame the attack as an unfortunate, if inevitable, byproduct carried out by a lone officer rather than a direct, foreseeable result of their own repeated incitements and endorsements. The core message they are attempting to project is that the cause is just and necessary, but that the consequences are someone else's fault entirely. This cynical attempt to harvest political support from the extreme actions while washing their hands of the ensuing tragedy has only further inflamed critics and raised serious questions about their moral and political accountability. U.S. citizens must seriously consider: is this the desired operating standard for our military? The current approach lacks the safeguards of rules to prevent the excessive use of force. It lacks the diversity of perspective that might have offered an alternative to the total destruction of an outmatched vessel's crew. Furthermore, it suffers from a lack of self-aware, humane top leadership capable of grasping the profound wrongness of this attack. General Jim Mattis said, "Engage your brain before you engage your weapon." That's all for this week. Until next time, remember, your voice is vital. Stand up, speak out, strike back. They don't know what they started. If you appreciate this content, please like, share, and subscribe. For updates, ring the bell. Your support truly helps the channel.